Welcome back to The Acceptance Project, the podcast where we talk openly and sometimes hear directly from people about the struggles we all face. I'm so excited to introduce you to someone truly special, Melody West, a life coach who calls herself an alchemist of possibilities. I love that title because it captures everything she stands for: hope, transformation, and the belief that even in life's hardest moments, we can find something new and meaningful. Melody helps people navigate loss, rebuild their sense of self, and rediscover joy in a way that's compassionate, creative, and completely human. We became friends after meeting at a conference in Seattle. Her work is fascinating, and I knew immediately she was someone I wanted to have on the podcast and introduce to all of you. So, let's jump right in and get to know Melody of Melody West Consulting. Melody, I love that you call yourself an alchemist of possibilities. That's such a unique title. So when you say that, what do you mean by that, and how did you come up with that?
Well, I'll tell you. But Bryan, first of all, I just want to say thank you. I am so appreciative to be on your podcast. I'm very excited about your organization, Bridging Success, and your acceptance project. Your desire to create a space for real people in real life really touches me. I am honored, my friend, to support your vision of nurturing acceptance and making a real difference in the world. So thank you for having me. Now, how did I come up with an alchemist? Well, I am an alchemist. And what I mean by that is I'm always blending a variety of learnings. I've gathered them from books and classes and people, even little snippets of conversation at a grocery store. And of course, there's all this life experience, right? So sometimes I think I'm like this great big old giant mixing bowl, just taking different ingredients, a little lesson from here and there, and maybe a little Oprah thrown in or whatever, right? And it's all just being blended together. And then all these different possibilities and viewpoints become possible. It's really how I think and how I process life, to be honest. And by doing that, I think it allows me to approach problems more creatively and to see fresh perspectives. That helps me and others become more open.
So here at the Acceptance Project, one of the very first things I talked about in the intro was that this was going to be a safe space for people to be able to express their own ideas or feelings and emotions and all that. And I know that you've said that your coaching sessions are a safe space where people can cry, yell, or even say nothing at all. How do you make people feel that kind of comfort when they're in such a vulnerable space?
Well, first of all, I believe it is an honor to support people. And I think that really comes across. I genuinely care. Mm-hmm. I know how hard it is to open yourself up and be vulnerable to others. And, that requires giving people my full attention. I reassure them that what they are going through is a normal response to an abnormal circumstance. So I invite them to tell me their story. Loss has lots of different sources and stories. I encourage them to share their story and where they are on that story. In that story, is there loss from a death or loss of a relationship, their health, loss of a pet? Maybe they've lost their security or their identity. So I hold space for people in all kinds of loss.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm not sure. I'm sure you are familiar with Brene Brown and her research on vulnerability, and it's always a great topic that I use in my classes. So thank you for sharing that. You also talk about believing in possibilities and the power of positivity. One of the things that we definitely promote here on the Acceptance Project is positive psychology. So how do you hold on to that outlook when someone's going through something as heavy as grief?
Well, I'm really fascinated with our human ability to hold two opposite things at once. Grief and hope can both be true at the same time. It's kind of like a seesaw, right? You might have grief on one side and hope on the other, and sometimes there's more hope than grief, but they can both be there. And there's not always perfect balance, but you can move back and forth. And even if it's not feeling really good or if it's uncomfortable, I think it's positive to feel all of our different feelings. And then we can choose to be with it, work through it, and then we can choose to shift and move on to something else. I think that's healthy in building emotional agility and resilience.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I like your example of that seesaw, and I definitely think that, sometimes holding on to that grief, but yet still having that hope really kind of helps balance things out. That's a great point. You mentioned synchronicity and that when we set strong intentions, opportunities show up. And, I've always wanted to be involved in helping others through, whether it was through speaking. And I feel like when I've truly given all that I have with this podcast and Bridging Success, and it just seems like now all of a sudden, all these opportunities are showing up everywhere. But can you share a time when you saw that happen in your own life or in a client's journey?
It's like, oh, there's so many. It's just all of a sudden a million things came into my mind at once. I think from my own experience, I can tell you that there have been times when I've had some deep grief and some big obstacles, and everything just kind of it's silent. There doesn't feel like there's anything possible. And so, and the more you try to push through that, the harder it is. Then you don't give yourself enough time. But being able just to kind of slow everything down and really get really rooted with, well, what's important? What are my values? What is my bigger vision? And just trying to settle down all of the noise. And we can get back to those basics. What's really important? What value do I want to follow? How do I want to respond? Pretty soon, the voice of your soul starts whispering back. And then pretty soon, I think you just start seeing things start opening up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard to find that synchronicity when there's so much noise going on. And there's a lot of noise right there in the world right now, right? I mean, it's everywhere. Yeah. So sometimes it's forced upon us to kind of go internal and be quiet. And sometimes we have to mentally make ourselves just slow down and really listen to our hearts. Mm-hmm. Maybe that sounds a little too woo-hooey.
No, not at all. I was thinking when you were saying that, I was just thinking about how much noise I have experienced in my world just this morning already. I mean, first thing I do, flip the TV on, the news is playing. Then I get in the shower and I'm listening to either the news or podcast while I'm in the shower. And then I come downstairs and I get something for breakfast. And now I'm on the internet. I'm reading the news there. And there's so much noise coming at me from all over the world just in a matter of just an hour that I agree. Like sometimes just shutting things off and just listening to my own thoughts and kind of being in the space where I can think about what I need to do that day to be productive. It's difficult. And there is so much noise and grief in the world right now. So no, that's a great example. I love that.
Yeah.
So, you've been through tough times. I mean, we all have. And as you mentioned just now, there's a lot of tough things going on in the world right now that we're dealing with. We all have different ways of dealing with those tough times. For me, I kind of feel like going and reading some of my favorite authors or listening to my favorite podcasts. Right now, I'm loving the Mel Robbins, Let Them, and of course, Brene Brown is one of my favorites. I found the Anderson Cooper, this podcast this morning about grief and talking through grief, which I'm really excited to listen to more again. But how did your own experiences with loss or life, how did those experiences change or shape the way you show up for others now? Because it's got to be difficult to set your own issues aside and help others with their own issues and move forward.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes, with grief, you really just have to really be grounded. And I think that's the thing. When I was having a really hard time a few years back, and literally, I guess the thing is I was in a depression and I never really I thought I understood depression. You don't really understand it until you've really experienced it. And I lost all of that voice, all of the things that whispered to me, none of the authors, nothing helped for a period of time. I just shut down. And because I think in colors and words and all these possibilities constantly swirling, for that to happen was frightening. And it took me quite a while to get back. And I wasn't sure if I could coach anymore.
Yeah.
And so it was a struggle. And I know that first call, when I came onto the call, and I just didn't know if I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally just said, I'll try one call and see how it goes. And, I'm not going to get into what had happened, but I was literally heartbroken. And so I'm like, how can I help? And I found that I focused so much on that other person. It was a Zoom call, so I could really just focus in, and I just imagined I was sitting right there next to that person. I was probably more focused in that call than ever.
Mm.
And the more I focused, then all of my stuff just fell away. And just being able to be there, not to fix, that's not my job. People aren't broken. They're naturally resourceful, creative, and whole. It's my job to help them remember that and reconnect to that.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, is being able to say, okay, whatever I'm feeling right now, whatever's going on in my head, I just need to gently put that aside. Maybe put it in a little box and just put it over there for a while and take a time out and just be with someone else in their space.
Right.
And as it turns out, I think my coaching work probably healed me as I was working with people as much as it helped them. And so, again, sounds kind of woo-hooey, but I think my work actually does heal me and keep me in practice of, you got to take care of yourself and walk the talk. And because I've been in those experiences where it's like, oh man, I don't know if I can get up and do this. I think it makes me way more patient, and I'm not in that mode of, well, hurry up, knock, 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 hurry up, get on. You're okay, suck it up. If anything, I'm more like, whoa, slow your roll. Let's just be with this a little bit longer so you can get through it.
Yeah. It reminds me, as you're talking about that and describing your own feelings, I don't know if you've seen the tagline that I have, or my signature line on all my emails that says, courage doesn't always roar like a lion. Sometimes it's that quiet voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow.
Yes.
I love that, because I feel like that's been sort of a motto for my life as well. And, talking about depression, when I'm teaching about, depression in my psychology classes that I teach, when I ask students, if you've ever been through an actual clinical depression, I hear people say all the time, oh, it's a beautiful spring day. Just go out and get some sun on your face. You'll feel better. And the truth is, you could live on the sun and not feel better. And that's the example that I give. And so many students, they can relate to that. So I definitely, I appreciate, you saying that, and sort of giving people who may be listening now an opportunity to understand that even those of us who work with other people, even in this field, there are days when, like you said, we have to put our own emotions and stuff in a box and put it away and say, I'll come back to this later today. But for now, I'm just going to be present for you. So it's definitely, it's an adjustment. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
I have to tell you, that's one of my favorite quotes. I have it hanging on the wall right outside my office.
Yeah. I love the quote that I can see behind you right now that says, old ways won't open new doors. Yeah. And that is so true. So true. We can't, the definition of insanity, continuing to do the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I feel like I have perfected insanity. So I'm trying to work on my own issues right now as well. So
we're a work in progress.
Absolutely. So I'll be honest with you. A few years ago, I had to actually kind of educate myself on the difference between counseling and grief coaching. And there's a lot of people, or coaching in general, because I wasn't really sure what is the difference between counseling and coaching. They sound very similar, but they are very different. So there may be people listening who they don't really understand. Well, is she a counselor? Is she a therapist? Or is she a coach? Does she wear a whistle around her neck? Does she blow her whistle when you're not behaving correctly? Whatever. How would you explain in simple terms to someone who's never heard of coaching? I know you do grief coaching, but how would you explain coaching to someone else?
When I first started coaching, they gave this great story, and I'll try not to muck it up too much, the difference between a consultant, a coach, and a counselor. And a consultant, if you want to learn how to ride a bicycle, a consultant will ride the bicycle and write a 30-page book for you on how to ride a bicycle. A counselor will ask you all about your past experiences with riding a bicycle. And how do you feel about that? And, what do you want? And all of those things. A coach will hold onto you and the bicycle until you get your balance. And then they'll walk beside you as you figure out how to do this on your own.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to steal that for my psych classes. Just so you know, I'll give you credit, but I'm so going to steal that for my psychology classes. That's a great example.
It is. And I got it, I can't take credit. It stuck with me from some of my coach training. And I think that is the difference. And foundationally in coaching and with counseling, we can't fix people. It's not our job. It's not in our power. Thank goodness. It's really about being with. And, I know coaches, I know therapists. I've been to both over the years, and both are very good. In my work, I was working for a company for a while, and I did coaching. And a lot of it was life coaching or grief, everything, right, that comes up. And for a lot of the grief things, as with all life things, coaching was fine. You can, that helps the majority of the people. However, licensed mental health professionals are really, really important. They're the people who can really diagnose and treat things like depression or anxiety or PTSD or trauma. And those can be triggered. Even if somebody's doing really well with PTSD or past trauma in their lives, grief has a way of pulling back up all of these awful feelings and memories. And so there's another level of healing. So sometimes as a coach working with people in grief, I would help them to begin with and help kind of put that fire out a little bit, lessen the intensity, and we kind of get to some of the underlying issues that were being, triggered. And then it would be like, okay, now it's time. I think it's good for you to see a counselor now. So they can actually work really close together.
Yeah. Wow. So now a lot of people, maybe they feel guilt. There's this sense of guilt for wanting to move forward after a loss. For whatever reason, they may say, I don't want to ever forget the person that I've lost, or I don't want to forget, my experiences. I don't, how that shaped me or what have you. So how do you help someone who maybe is feeling this guilt about moving on? How do you help them to grow and still honor what they've lost or who they've lost?
Good question. The thing is, Bryan, is we never forget, and we don't want to forget. If we're grieving someone, or something, there's a lot of love there. So why would we want to forget that? So what we do is it's more about building your life around your grief, learning how to hold it and not let it shut down the rest of your life. When I was looking for space to hold some grief groups, I was looking at different sites and like the rec centers and stuff. And I said, well, I'd like a little bit of privacy. And they said, oh, yeah, probably, because people get emotional. And I'm sure there's a lot of crying. And I said, well, yeah, there's crying, but we also laugh a lot.
Yeah.
And so that can be disruptive. If you're in the library and you got a group of people laughing, and and the looks I would get from these people were like, oh my God, what are you doing? It's a grief group. And I said, well, honoring our loved ones and sharing stories is part of the healing process. Yeah. And most of our society is not comfortable hearing about it. They're afraid to ask, or they don't want to know. They're afraid to make somebody cry, and that makes them uncomfortable, not the person crying.
Right.
And so it's like it's saying it's okay to laugh. It's okay to laugh at the funeral. It's okay to tell this is what drove me nuts about my husband or whatever it is. It's the whole thing.
Well, definitely. There's that fear of you don't want to forget, but you also, you worry about making someone feel sad by bringing up that person who's passed on, bringing up their name, when in reality, that person who has lost that, they just want to hear that person's name. They enjoy hearing that person's name. And laughing doesn't mean you've forgotten. It's just a happy memory. But I've also heard people say that sometimes they worry that if they're starting to laugh and that maybe they're forgetting, and I don't think it's that they're learning to, or that they're forgetting. They're just maybe they're learning how to live with that grief, giving
Yeah,
that grief space when it needs to be there.
yeah. They're healing. It's part of
Yeah,
the healing, right? It's being, but yes, it's like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't get excited to be invited or go to a Christmas party because my spouse isn't here, or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, it's okay. You're still alive.
yeah. Healing's not forgetting.
Healing is not forgetting. Yeah.
So I have to ask, you describe yourself as being happily addicted to reading. I love reading. I love books. My office here is, I need to get some more bookshelves because I'm
Yeah.
having to stack books on top of books that are in the bookshelf. So one of my favorite books, and any of my students who may hear this podcast, especially if they've had my lifespan psychology class, then they know that Mitch Albom's book, Tuesdays with Maury, is my all-time favorite book, and it's a required reading. So any students listening to this, if you take my lifespan class, go ahead and get a copy of that book. You're going to have But anyway, so what is a book that has really changed you? How do you think that it helped you with maybe healing or personal growth?
Oh my gosh. I could talk books all day long, Brian. It is so hard to pick one or even 10, probably. Um, Keeping it kind of in the grief group or grief area. Probably coaching at end of life, a coach approach of ministering to the dying and the grieving. Very long title. And that's by Dr. Eisenhower. The thing is, it's how that has influenced me is it's really taking a coach approach that you can teach someone how to coach themselves.
Mm.
And that really struck me because it's like it is different. It's not just about someone coming to me once a week and talking and working through whatever they need to work through that day. It's I have the responsibility to help them learn how to coach themselves. It's my job to not only listen and provide support, but also to help them know what do you need. Like telling the importance of bearing witness, being able to tell your story, or maybe even just who is safe to talk to, because not everybody is safe. But
Mm.
do you have a list that you can call, even in the middle of the night, of people who you could at least reach out to?
Mm.
And so basically, that's one of the books I love that got me going down that road. Um, Done with the Crying by Sherry McGregor. Man, that woman is awesome. She is the go-to about estrangement grief.
Yeah.
And I just can't say enough about that and how that's helped me, not only in estrangement areas, but, just being able to say, yeah, it's there, own it, be with it, and then choose to move on.
Yeah. So as you said that, Melody, I was thinking of a book that I read years ago, and the author is by Colette Dowling, and it's about a woman's perspective. It's about women's issues, not just women's issues, but women going through things such as depression, addiction, anxiety, whatever it may be, grief, whatever. As a therapist, she wrote this book, and how she has gone through these and how she adapted to that. It's a really great book. And the name of the book is called You Mean I Don't Have to Feel This Way by
Mm.
Colette Dowling. And it's a really good book. I've recommended that to people in the past. It's a really good book. So one thing I've noticed about you, Melody, is you have such a creative and heart-centered approach, which obviously is one of the things that drew me to you when we first met. Your smile, your laugh, it's contagious when you do. So that drew me to you immediately. So what's something a client might experience in a session with you that's a little different from traditional coaching?
I do a lot of work with metaphors. a ton of work with metaphors. That's how I think. And so I try to paint a picture or get them to thinking about things in their own words. I may give an example. For example, I'll talk a little bit about transition sometimes. And of course, it depends on the circumstances, right? I mean, it's not like I have this formula of here's the things we're going to talk about. But I, I, I like to reinforce people that transition is part of life, and grief is a huge transition. And transition actually begins with the end of something, and then the middle, and then the beginning. And so I kind of paint this picture of think of the circus acts where they have the trapeze and they're swinging and they're holding on to one bar and they have to let go, and before they can reach that other bar, there's nothing but air, and how uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And just if imagine the end, of it being simply like death, right? And then that in between of, oh my gosh, now I don't have anything to hold on to, my identity, everything. Death affects everything. Then you can grab hold of the next part. And so just kind of helping people think of, the end is not the end. Where are you? And it's okay. And you may have to swing back and forth. And you may be stuck in this limbo of transition a long time. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's part of it is I'm always thinking, and like I said earlier, about alchemy, taking bits and pieces of this and that, and being able to take my clients' words and their interests and being able to kind of help wrap that back into something that they can identify with. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of is something that surprises people, that, I encourage metaphors, because sometimes we can't think of the words. We see it as an image. That's okay. Tell me what you're saying. Let's get curious about that. Why do you suppose that's there now? What's coming up around that?
Yeah. That's a great example, because I was just envisioning like being at the circus and seeing the trapeze artist. And if you think about like you're holding on to the one bar, and that bar it is grief, and having the courage to let go of that and reach for another bar that you haven't touched yet, where that might be some healing or movement forward, but just having that courage to let go and you're just kind of in free space there without any security. That's a great example. I think I'm just going to play this podcast back to my students on the next lecture. That's going to be my next lecture. Okay, so here comes a really hard question. Suppose that someone is listening today. They're listening to this podcast and they're in the middle of grief and they can't see hope or any possibility. Maybe they can't let go of that metaphorical bar, that they're the trapeze, whatever. They can't see that hope or that possibility. What would you say to them right now?
You're okay. You are going to be fine. You are having a normal response to abnormal circumstances. And I would share my BAT process, BAT. Give yourself permission to be with your feelings for as long as you need, and be patient and gentle with yourself as you heal. Then you'll be ready to see possibilities and next steps.
Wow. I like that. I like that acronym, BAT. I'm going to have to write that down and remember that. That's really good. That's powerful. Okay. So the last question, this is probably going to be the most difficult question. So someone who is listening to this today, they may want to reach out to you to schedule coaching sessions. What would be the best way for them to contact you? So here's your chance to plug for Melody West Consulting.
Oh, yeah, that's the hardest question you've asked me.
You got to pay the bills, Melody. You got to pay the bills.
Well, the best way is through my website, melodywestconsulting.com. And you'll find all kinds of information there. And there's a contact me button. I have a lot of different events that I'm always doing. I'm having a book club, book discussion, I should say, about the Let Them book by Mel Robbins that you referenced earlier. And I also have several grief sessions coming up for the holidays. So that's the best way to find me and also find out what's going on.
Yeah. And I would imagine during the holidays is definitely a time when a lot of grief seems to creep way back into the people's lives, and that fear of, am I moving on and enjoying the holidays? Does that mean I'm forgetting?
Yeah. Yeah, it is a hard time. And there's other days too that are just as hard, right? I mean, we think a lot more around the holidays, but sometimes it can be like spring training can be hard for someone if if they always did baseball games and stuff together. And so I always try to add more sessions and more times to the holiday season. But anybody who's listening, if you know people who, really had a favorite thing or favorite pastime with their friend or their loved one who's gone, reach out during those times too, because they need it.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, you brought up spring training. All these books keep popping back into my head. So I'm going to ask this one question as well. One additional question. So if you haven't read Billy Crystal's book, 700 Sundays, he talks about his relationship with his father. And he talks about how he still enjoys baseball just as much, maybe more now, because it is a way to reconnect. If someone knew of another person, maybe a friend who has lost someone, and there was that favorite activity, maybe going to a baseball game, would it be
Yeah.
okay to invite that person? Hey, let's go to a baseball game. And maybe even say, hey, let's go to a baseball game and celebrate this person that you've lost or whatever. Would that be okay?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. They're
Yeah.
going to cry. Crying is not the worst that can happen. Crying's beautiful. Let it out.
Yeah.
Just simply being invited, simply being able to speak that person's name, say, hey, I was thinking about Joe the other day, that when we did this or that together, and it just made me smile. People love hearing those things and people reaching out to them. Yeah, don't be afraid.
Well, Melody, thank you so much for sharing your heart and your wisdom today. Both have been amazing, and I appreciate it so much. I think what you said about creating space for people to just be, without judgment, without pressure, it's something the world really needs more of right now. So, for those of you listening, if you'd like to learn more about Melody and her work as a grief coach, check out her website, melodywestconsulting.com, or follow her on social media. And I'll have her links listed on the show notes so you can go back and check it out there as well.
Thank you so much for having me today, Bryan. And thank you for the passion and positive impact you're having on the world. We need it.
Thank you, Melody. And as always, thank you for listening. And just remember, even in the toughest times, there are possibilities waiting to be discovered. Take care of yourself and take care of those around you. The Acceptance Project is a production of Bridging Success, LLC. To learn more about the podcast and our work, please visit bridgingsuccess.com. This podcast and its content are for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. I'm Dr. Bryan Gross, but I'm not a licensed therapist. The topics and opinions shared by me and any guests are our own and should not replace professional or medical advice. If you are seeking mental health support, medical guidance, or help with personal matters, please reach out to a licensed professional who can provide the individual support you need.